YouTube later. But we are thankful to God for his goodness today. Thank you, Lord, for one more day. Thank you, Brother Vaughn, for singing that and sharing that with us this morning. We thank God for you this morning. I'm dealing with the subject today, love your neighbor all year long. Love your neighbor all year long. Today I want to use for a text, Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. I'm going to read a couple of those verses, but I would like for you to read that text, Luke 10, 25 through 37. 25 starts, then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And he said to him, what is written in the law? What do you read there? And he answered, the young lawyer answered, you shall love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said unto him, you have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live. But wanting to justify himself, he said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? And Jesus replied, a man was going down the road from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell in the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him dead. Then 33 says, but a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, was moved with pity, and he went and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then put him on his animal and brought him to the inn and cared for him. The text goes on to describe what happened to the man. So the Samaritan comes down the road and finds the man. And as I said last Sunday, this month is Black History Month, and I dealt with that some last Sunday. And then went back to the notion of looking at last Sunday was Black History Month. I'm going to be dealing with that later this month. But I also want to deal with love. Now today is Valentine's Day, Love Day. More flowers are sent today than any other time of the year. Folks share that love, bought cars. I bought a few myself. And we share those love notions as this comes up. But see, there's the Greek notion of love, which says that there's agape love, and there are three different kinds of love that the Greeks talked about. And some of us get caught up in that. Sometimes we'll say, I love you, but not like that. So, you know, I'm hesitant to tell a man that I love you, because somebody might start thinking. So, I mean, we get all caught up in that notion. And then if it's certain women that if I say something to, since I'm a married man, folks be saying, what do you mean by that? And so we are hesitant to tell one another that we love you. The Hebrews, on the other hand, only had one notion of love. Either you loved or you didn't. Now it may manifest itself in different ways, but there is but one love. I tend to resonate with that notion, that Hebrew notion, that love is love. It isn't I love you this way and I love you that way. I love you because you're my race and not because you're not my race. Or I love you because you're my brother, but if you're my cousin, I don't love you the same way. See, that's nonsense to me. That love is love. And so when the lawyer stood up to test Jesus, he talked about love God. I won't deal with that much this morning because you got to love God with all your heart. You got to love God more than others. And then he goes on to say, love thy neighbor as thyself, but that means that you have to love yourself. Now, I find that is a little Black history moment for us when we deal with this passage. Well, I'll come back to that, but Jesus tells a parable to the rich ruler and to us. Parable is using heavenly things to describe earthly things. So he uses this story to tell of this man, a Jew, who was going down the road. He was going down a dangerous road from Jerusalem to Jericho, and there he fell among robbers. See, that road was crooked and dangerous, and it was like going into what now is Black Bottom. There's always a Black Bottom in every town, and folk had a notion, you don't go to Black Bottom. Well, if you live in Black Bottom, it's different. But see, we got these notions about places. Some folk will say to me at times, you ought not go to the church by yourself because there might be robbers out there. I got robbers on Shadowford Road where I live. So robbers are always there. But these were curvy roads, and they had crooks and turns where robbers could hide. And so this robber robbed this man and left him for dead. Now, the priest comes by. If you read that story, the priest comes by. That's the pastor who's on his way to church, and he's in a hurry, and I ain't fooling with that person. You might get blood on my robe, on my suit. And then the Levite comes by. That's the church leader. That's the deacons and the trustees and good members who would come by, who would tell you to help. If you need me, call me. They don't mean it, but they'll tell you that. See, and so both of them pass by on the other side. And here comes this Samaritan. Now, Samaritans were the outcast. That was the person who was down out. That wasn't the person you would expect to help you. After all, you've been kicking them. You've been talking about them, scandalizing their names, and yet this man comes down the road, a stranger, and takes this man up and bandages him up and puts him on his donkey and takes him to town and says to them, if there's something needed more than what I've already given you, when I come back, I'll pay that. Now, Jesus then asked the man, who was the neighbor? That priest that passed by on the other side? That good church member, that deacon, that trustee that said, I'll help you, but didn't mean it? Or this man who was the outcast? So the lawyer says to him, well, the Samaritan was the neighbor. And Jesus reminds him then, you need to be doing the same. Well, you see, who is thy neighbor? First of all, you have to, when he said, love your neighbor as yourself, many of us as Black people especially, but not only Black folks, some others these days but Black folks we have what we call internal racism. We have been built into us for generations that you really ain't nothing. You do realize that the Constitution says that for accounting purposes, a Black person, a Black man was 3/5 of a person. And so many folk don't see themselves as human because other folk have said that. Folk can tell sometimes even their own children, you ain't gonna amount to nothing. Rather than saying you are somebody and you are capable of being the very best that God made, we tell folk you ain't nothing. No, when they fall, we say just like I thought, they wasn't nothing no better. We are taught to put one another down, and so when you talk about loving your neighbor as yourself, if you don't love yourself, how you gonna treat your neighbor? If you don't look into the mirror, I say this often, and like what you see, while your rollers in your hair, before you done comb your hair, before you even brush your teeth, you don't want to get too close to them, but you ought to still feel like you somebody. And they ought to feel like you are somebody. And so when you love yourself, before you put makeup on, see, if you really want to find somebody, you got to find them when they ain't all dressed up. And if you like them then, you'll like them when they dressed up. See, most of us want to impress somebody by dressing up. My son, y'all know I got this old Chevrolet truck that's got a green door on it. And one of my sons told his son, said, now if you start thinking seriously about a woman, you go get that truck and ride her in that truck. And if she'll ride in that truck, then you keep going with her. Amen. But if she won't ride in that truck, you don't need her. Well, you see, what he was saying, and what I'm saying to you is that when you are not looking your best, that if you can't impress somebody then, you sure can't impress them when you looking your best, because you ain't always going to look your best. You're not always going to have on a tuxedo and a long white dress. See, you got to impress them with what you got. That's why so many folks now fall out of love so quick. I remember when Louise and I married, and the first breakfast she cooked, she broke the eggs in a bowl and started beating them up. And I said, what is she doing? My mama don't cook eggs like that. My mama would break the eggs into the pan and scramble them there. And that was the way I was used to them being scrambled. So you see, when you loving somebody, I learned to love them eggs beat up like she was beating them. And now that's the only way I eat them. I wouldn't know how to eat them broke in the pan. But you see, what happens to so many folks is they get caught up in things rather than the love. Sometimes a cake tastes better when somebody you love made it and they put their foot in it, we say. Mm-hmm. Well, see, what that means is not only did they do the ingredients well, but somehow they put a little love in that cake and made that cake better. You see, that's what a neighbor does. When you're a neighbor, you're willing to make that for yourself, but you're being also willing to do that for somebody else. That's why this man takes this notion here. Now on this Valentine's Day, let me say to many folks that there are going to be some folks who mad because they didn't get something on this day. Well, you see, too many folks, men and women now, have made prostitutes out of themselves. You got to buy me before you can get there. Well, you see that notion says to me that your love is caught up in what I get out of it. And see, we don't like to talk about prostitutes, but I ain't just talking about prostituting sex. You can prostitute yourself. If all I'm interested in being pastor of this church is the money I get, I'm prostituting myself. If all I get out of singing is if you don't say you enjoy it, man, then I'm mad because I'm prostituting myself to you. You got, if it's just another chore, well, it's another Sunday, I got to find a sermon. Then I start prostituting myself, and you lose the sense of love. That's the thing that prostitutes don't have, is they don't have a sense of love. You got to do something out of love. You see, even to husbands and wives, or if you got a mate, you got, when you look, we had two mules at times, and you would hook the mules together, because two mules together could pull